Good. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come join us. For those of you who I maybe unfortunately have not had the chance to meet, I'm Peter Nordenberg. I'm the Director of Investments and Operations Manager at Gentian Financial. And as you're all accustomed to, you have to listen to me stand up here for a few minutes before you get to see the guys you really came for. Today's agenda, we'll give you a little update on the firm, what's happening within the team, things like that. We'll talk about behavioral finance, what it means to you. Talk about markets, the economy, market corrections, bull and bear markets. Then we'll probably take a quick 5-minute break. We'll come back and Chris will share everything that he learned at the Abundance 360 conference last week when he talks about technology and innovation. And as most of you know, when Chris is very excited about something, he tends to like to talk about it. So we're going to try and get you out of here by about 5 o'clock. So please join me in welcoming Chris Doty, Ken Flannery, and Zach DeBoer.
So, do you ever imagine a world where people make up words?
I live in that world.
How about words like automagical? How about words like healthgevity? You've heard that before, right? What's happening and what's about to happen is both of those words. We're going to give you an economic update here and keep that to the smaller portion. But what's happening today in technology will affect the very base of the families that you have, know, and love. Your friends, your interactions, who you can communicate, how you communicate with them, our perception of those, and the reality of those. If that's going to change everything that we have, everything we have that's important, everything that money is a resource to support, who here thinks that might be important to know a little bit more about? Yes. So I have committed to 25 years with a group called Abundance 360 to bringing you the ideas, and not just bringing you the ideas, but how might that affect us, helping us to think a little bit differently. So we all look at the world. You may get some information. You've got some of you look at this information and technologies, but what's interesting is to see the people who created it when you're in the room with them. It just gives you this different view, and all of a sudden, it reminds me of a song where the lyrics, I can't stop thinking big, I can't stop thinking big. Mine is the effect of people. How is this going to affect people? How is this going to affect doctor-patient interaction? How is this going to affect friend interaction? What is good about this? And then I am the one who says, what's not good about this? So the second portion of this will be some passionate discussion about that as we go through. What we're going to do here as we move forward is I want to introduce a new member of our team and then our existing team, which I think you know. So here, you know Ken Flannery, obviously. You know Peter Nordenberg, who is, of course, my right-hand man, basically everything behind the scenes and now in front of the scenes, which is even better. I appreciate that. Zach DeBoer, who is the oldest 25-year-old, the oldest millennial you'll ever meet. Love him to death. Great young man who you'll see, and he'll be speaking with us today. Lisa, now I'm going to say with this about Lisa and Julio. Lisa's been with me for about 6 years now, is it? She takes care of me and all this stuff that you guys need on a very consistent basis. You'll know that. But also behind the scenes, who's a little more quiet, is Julie. She's really become one of our operational gurus. When we have some stuff, she digs right into it. She nails it. So she's been phenomenal for us. Ashley Neuwirth, who you all know here, who's been in charge of doing the program, setting these up, setting up all the speaking engagements we have coming up. So Ashley is a director of client impressions. And then with Kristen Ellsworth, who's also been helping with the program, getting this online, also getting some of the social media out, and more importantly, in a newer role, she's going to be in charge of capturing family wealth. But what I'm getting tired of is going to funerals and finding out incredible things I didn't know about you or your spouse or your family. And those not going any farther than the funeral. So some of you in this case, as my gift to you, I'm going to start offering the ability to capture. This will be one of Kristen's roles. She's phenomenal. If you haven't met her, you will have. It's a pleasure when you'll meet her, just as an FYI. So she's fantastic at this as well. So we also have a new man in our family, literally, Mike Man. So we like to call him the new man. There's a lot of man jokes now we can make. But Mike has joined it. He'll be joining us in the Financial Planning Associate, so he'll be doing a lot of the background. We're going to start doing a lot of financial planning with you and your family. It's all going to be based on financial planning first, and I think that's one of the pieces he'll come and he'll really make a really big contribution to as well. So thank you for bringing him along. Now what I'd like to do is introduce Zach, who's going to talk a little bit more about the behavioral finance aspect of how we look at the world and really share some great insights with that.
Thanks, Chris.
You bet.
Really appreciate it. And I absolutely love the behavior side of things, in finance especially, but also just in general. Why do we make the decisions that we do? What comes at us from different directions? How does that affect us? So we live in a VUCA world. What does VUCA mean? We live in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and an ambiguous world. Would anyone agree here that we live in a VUCA world? Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And it only appears to be getting worse and worse. Would anyone here be interested in ways that we could potentially reduce the VUCA in our lives? Absolutely. Hopefully I can give you a few tips today to combat that and be aware of it as well. Why does it seem like we are in such a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world? It's because of the information that is flooding at us at an unbelievable rate. Things that happen every 60 seconds. Every 60 seconds, 44 million text messages are sent. 2.3 million likes on Facebook. And I just read in the Investors Business Daily newspaper the other day that 1.52 million people in 2018 checked into Facebook every day.
Wow.
1.52 billion. 20% of the entire world checks into Facebook every single day. 3.1 million searches on Google. 150 million emails are sent. It is completely normal to feel anxious and to feel like it is a VUCA world because that's what has kept us alive. It's the fight or flight. We are designed to look at these things and it creates fear. And how does that happen? Through the outlets that we watch. We poke fun at them, CNN, constantly negative news, focusing on extremes for Fox. It is not to bash these companies. They're doing exactly their jobs. It's to bring us information. Unfortunately, they are experts at attacking that fear. So step number one in reducing the VUCA is just being aware of that. Being aware that when you turn on CNN, Fox, they're trying to trigger those instincts that make us human and that what has kept us alive and our ancestors before us alive. Have anyone here ever had such great advice that you didn't know was great advice for about 10 years after you got that advice? And then it finally hits at the right time? When I was young, when I was less than 10 years old, my parents told me good in, good out, bad in, bad out. And at the time, you're just like, yeah, mom, dad, I get it, no problem. But how true is that? That the good in reflects good out, bad in reflects bad out. So that's number two. You first be aware of it, and then you consciously look at, is this something that's good for me, or is this something to potentially harm me? What influences our mindset on a daily basis? It's the people around us. We have people that lift us up, and we have some people that unfortunately bring us down a little bit as well. And it's just not necessarily cutting the people that bring us down out, but just being aware that when you're around those people, you might have to shift your mindset a little bit and be prepared for it. Your home and workplace environment. Has anyone gone to work, been extremely stressed out, get home, and you're even more stressed out? The house is out of order, got to make food, you got so many different things thrown at you. So the other one is to just go home and make sure your home is a place of comfort, peace, have it clean, have it essential to what you need to survive. The news we watch, we just covered that, but also just TV in general, and our phones as well. And so with that, you can either physically take something out to help you, or mentally. Physically, you can completely eliminate social media like I did in October, and I haven't had it since. It was extremely hard for the fear of missing out for the first couple months, and it's been the best gift I've ever received and given to myself was cutting that information out. Mentally, you can just, like I said with people in your life, you can just adjust your mindset to be prepared that you might have some negative information at you and you're going to deflect it. So those are a few tips that hopefully can reduce the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguousness in your life as well. I'll be back to talk a little bit about what happened in 2017 and 2018, but I'll hand it back off to Chris.
Thank you, sir. Well, you guys all retired generally, right? I mean, you retired to a much less complex, more relaxed life, fewer things going on. I meet with you, it's hard to set appointments. The good news is you can at least have appointments in the day now. That helps a ton. But as you go through, thank you very much, Zach. I appreciate this. We've talked a lot about this. What kind of affects that? How about some of the current issues? Anybody up here ever heard anything about global trade and tariffs? So somebody pointed it out this way. I'm not going to go into politics because that goes down a slippery slope, but I'm going to show you something here. So when you look at trade and tariffs, let's say you're trading dinners with your neighbor. Okay, we're going to give you meatloaf because my wife makes great meatloaf, and we're going to give you spaghetti because you make great spaghetti. Okay, it's cool, but when you give me that spaghetti, you got to give me $100 as well. Well, why is that? Well, you were on, I know it's hard times. I really haven't had a job for a while, so just give me $100 because, we're just starting out. Now, I get a job, I become super successful, we do this trade again, and now we're very, very successful, but you still have to give me $100 every time we trade dinner. Does this make sense? No? That's the way a lot of the trade policies are set up. When we were the world superpower, we helped a lot of people who were in third world countries. So when you trade things, we're giving them an incredible deal. It's like the pharmaceutical industry, what we pay suits a lot of the world. So what you're finding on some of these is some of these need to be attacked at some point. It's just tough. It's tough information. We hear about it, but that trade brings up things to companies right here in our area. China's a big one we're talking about. I'm going to talk a lot about China in the second portion of this. It's a very interesting place. I got to take a little bit of time with David Li and Kai-Fu Li, two of the most amazing people in China and operating in Shenzhen, also educated here. We'll talk more about that. China is an incredible place. There's a lot of very cool things happening, and it's not what you think. Immigration, we've heard about the wall. Is that correct? Now let me ask a question. How many people in this room are immigrants at some point in their family? Yes, exactly. Every hand went up in here, right? So if we have a very strict immigration policy, I might not be here. The next one is politics. And you know what I think of politics, right? Poly, from the Greek word meaning many, and ticks being blood-sucking insects. Enough said about politics. What I do find interesting is I read a ton of books, and everybody gets this idea that, well, Democrats are this way and Republicans are this way, and Democrats like to throw in things, or Republicans. I'm like, listen, we have differing opinions on how to get where we're getting, but we all generally want something better for our family. What we want is we want generally to get to a point where we all have a great life, great education, great family, right? We just differ on how to get there. But it's interesting when you look at this. Back when Reagan and Bush were in, this is basically problems small businesses face. Look at the two administrations that actually raised the most issues for small businesses to face. Ronald Reagan and George Bush the first. Counter to what you believe. No, Republicans are really pro-business. Well, okay, maybe. And how about Bill Clinton, who ripped most of those away? Well, wait, that's counterintuitive. So you go back over here, Obama, there were some new ones, but you've got some of these coming down. Those are natural cycles. They don't happen necessarily because of a president. There are some that do. But we get sick of rules, so we don't want to play by them. That's what we do as Americans. So sometimes economics drives politics more than you think. I think everybody else in America, politics is now the soap opera. It's replaced days of our lives. Okay? But here's what I'm real sick of. The opposing views not playing together. It's through the opposing views that we grow stronger. I will now get off my soapbox, but I do believe in your families as well as politics. These kind of rumors we just have to squash and move on with. Tax policy, overseas jobs. Anybody here worked for a company that wasn't owned by an American company? Yes, it's much more common today. We're seeing on-sourcing of other jobs outside. Because of our being the number one most competitive economy in the world, we're seeing companies locate here. Anybody heard of something that rhymes with Oxcon? These companies are locating here because we are leading in energy, competitiveness, maybe education, but we've got a bunch of places we're leading in tremendously. Technological and business innovation as well. Those are issues that we see. Now the key is these are interesting. We know they're there, but as we look at those, I'm going to come into a couple things after he goes through the markets of what do we do about those?
Yeah, what do we do about those? And one of the things, as you know, that these forums try to do, and a lot of people have been here for years and years and years. You've been doing these for 15 years with us, right? We're always trying to make you become a better investor. That's really our goal. A better investor with a better outcome. That's what we're absolutely committed to. Vince Lombardi, he has this saying, gentlemen, this is a football, right? And so I was like, well, there's got to be more to that, right? Like, I've heard that 1,000 times. What comes after that? He's like, in every fiber of me, we will make this the best season ever, right? That's what he says after. We will make this the best season ever. I'll try and try and try until we succeed. And if we don't get it right the first time, we'll keep doing it. That's what we're doing here. So if a lot of you get this. A lot of you have been here for years and years, and you understand the fundamentals that we're going through. For those that you are new in the room, this is a message that we're going to talk about a lot, is preparing for market corrections. It's what distinguishes us from a great investor to a poor investor. How is that possible? How is that possible? It's the behavior of finance that Zach just talked about. It's people becoming emotional when they shouldn't become emotional. Think about this. Those that have already been retired, I urge you to share your stories at the table, because there's a lot of people here that are getting ready to retire. So newer folks to the Gentian, or already retired. So think about this. Think about how they're feeling right now. Who here remembers December of last year, a couple months ago? Got your statement? We all remember that one. It brought us back to being human again, right? Because we're like, whoa, the markets can go down. That's right, we experienced that. Think about this. Someone retiring today, leaving a great paying job. Put my notice in, I'm retiring, everything is going great. I'm going to live on Social Security, maybe a pension, and I'm going to live on my portfolio that was $1 million, and now it's $800,000. How's that person feeling right now? Not good, right? There's some anxiety that comes along with that. There's some scaredness that comes along with that. So I urge you, if you've been in the trenches with us for 15, 20, 25 years in retirement, you've been through these cycles. You know how it works. Ask the people at your table, hey, where are you? Are you accumulating money? Are you getting ready to retire? What are you thinking about? Share your experiences. You are the best spokespeople we have, because you've been with us, you've lived it, but when we're going through that transition of retirement, we sometimes don't know that. Here's a good one. So this one, in the back, it's hard to see this, but what this shows is that there's sometimes where the economy stays absolutely flat, and there's sometimes where the economy grows nicely. All right? So I'm going to go back to the 40s. I'm getting to know my grandmother more because she's 88 years old and has starting to have dementia. So when Chris is talking about family wealth capture, here it is. I was talking to my grandma. We were talking about World War II back in the 40s. This is when the economy was flat. She pulled this out. And I was like, what is that?
Anybody know what that is?
It's a ration book. It's a war ration book for World War II, and it has stamps in it. This is amazing to me. I've never seen anything like this in my life, right? I've read about it, heard about it in history books. There's actual stamps in here. That's absolutely amazing to me. It's like an artifact, isn't it? On the back, think about this. Give your whole support to rationing and thereby conserve our vital goods. Be guided by this one rule. If you don't need it, don't buy it. That shaped that whole generation for years and years. And think about this. We look at this graph right here. There's a reason why we stayed flat. Manufacturing was tanks, bombs, ammunition, right? All of a sudden, then came the consumer revolution. And actually, I'm going to give credit to Kristen on this one. So, Kristen in the back there. So, if you don't need it, don't buy it. These people were environmentalists, and they didn't even know it. So again, then came the consumer revolution. This book pretty much went out the door, right? I mean, we could buy food, clothes, whatever. I mean, that really took off that whole thing. Mm-hmm. Then came the 70s. Where we stayed flat again. Gas crisis, right? If you've ever been in a meeting with me, I've always asked you what your life experiences have been during this time frame. I love these stories. Here's some interesting stories that I've heard along the way. You had to line up around the block to get gas in many cases. Really. If I asked anybody here what was a major change and transformation over your lifetime, a lot of you would say the computer. That's exactly what happened in the 80s and 90s. When we look at this, here was the 70s staying flat, 80s and 90s growing, right? That was Microsoft. That was Dell Computers. It's everywhere. It's in business. It changed the way we did business. I heard some stories about punch cards, about programming the other day. This stuff is amazing to me, right? Never experienced anything like this before, right? And then we have the Y2K. Everybody thought the world was going to come to an end. Everybody remember that? It didn't. Great. So we stayed flat for 12 to 15 years there. Then the internet revolution here. Chris is going to talk a lot about this. But if you think about automation in our home, the only thing that's really probably automated in our home right now is the Roomba, if you have one. Like the vacuum cleaner cruising around your house, then it goes back to its home when it's done, right? That's probably the only thing that's really automated. Now thermostats are becoming a little more automated. We're having more smart homes right now. So until this really gets into our home, I think this is the start of a huge revolution. I think Chris is going to talk about this in a second. Well,
and actually on this one too, this is a very, very, very important slide, because here's what I want to say. Ken brought up war rations, right? Anybody here remember war rations? Probably not quite old. Anybody remember your parents talking about them? Yes. So don't buy anything unless you need it. I didn't grow up in that time frame. I couldn't buy it because I didn't have money. But if you start to look at this, you grew up in a time of scarcity. Why is that important? Because your parents and you were raised in a time where scarcity of resources was a real thing. Okay? Mark that. Your grandchildren, who you don't understand, are growing up in a world of abundance with which you've never known. Why is there a fundamental difference between the two? Completely different pool. Scarcity to abundance. It is a massive difference. Now, here's another difference that goes with it. Back here, we're incrementally adding. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 1 is 4. They are living in exponentials. That's 1 times 2, or let's go. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 16 is 256. Beyond that, I ask Siri. Think about that. So we're going, and this is a major issue, from abundance, from scarcity, and from linear to exponential at the same time. Why don't you understand your grandkids? You didn't grow up learning that. The biggest thing we have coming is unlearning. Okay? It's a big thing we'll say. So I just wanted to go through that because it's a fundamental issue I see. And my goal is to have you both understand each other and understand that with that difference, there can be massive appreciation. I'll show you.
Great piece, Chris. Great piece. Thank you. This one says in the back of the room the history of the bulls and the bears. So the blue lines, the blue mountain charts, are all the years the markets have been positive, and the orange lines are all the years that the markets have been negative. Market correct. My in-law joke. Market corrections. I can't tell you which one it is anymore. But here it is. They're swift and visceral. They come without warning. Their length of stay is unknown. They're not pleasant when they're around, okay? My in-laws know I tell this joke. I love them. They're Colombians. They love to be around. They love to hug, kiss, drink. I'm getting a little bit of belly now because they're starting to feed me too much, right? You got to work on that. The other parts of this is that it's necessary. Stocks have been returned to their rightful owners in December. That's us. We have the right to own these stocks. Because what did we do in rebalancing? We actually went and bought what? When the markets were low, what did we buy? We bought low, right? That sounds very simple. Every one of you know this so well. But if you talk to people out there, I talk to friends that I have in the business, they're investment guys, right? They're not teaching this stuff, right? They're just, hey, we got the best return, we got this best fund. That it's not common knowledge. We all think we're like ourselves, right? But we're like, after you start talking to people, you're like, whoa, maybe not everyone's like me. They're actually way more sane than I am. No, anyways, so that's market corrections. This one is very difficult to see. I'll summarize this. This goes back to the 70s to today. It talks about the declines in the market, like 2008, 2009. That was a major one. We were down. The markets were down 50%. That's a major change. And this talks about how long it took to get back to recovery. Okay, so think about this. In September 2000, 2002, the recovery took to get back up to even was almost 4 years. Almost 4 years. In 2008 to 2009, the financial crisis we went through, almost 3 years to get back up to even. The markets are up and the markets are down. Throughout the year, like December was a great example, markets were down almost 20% between October and December. It was almost what we call a bear market, from top to bottom, negative 20%. That constitutes for a bear market. Almost hit it, not quite. This is the annual end of the world. January's been much better so far in 2019, right? Anybody, has the statements come out yet? Have you guys got your statements? Yes. Yeah? You seen recovery? It's been nice. So this is something we'll show you every year. Volatility, the ups and downs of your portfolio, it's very common. But we have to go through them. We have to go through the pain to get the gain. This is a great one. Again, I'm going to try to summarize this because people in the back can't really see it. It talks about stocks and bonds, the volatility of stocks and bonds, the ups and downs, the returns. In any given 1 year, the worst year for stocks and bonds could be down 39% for stocks, right? We know that. Or we could experience a nice high as well. Over a 5-year period, bonds, which are perceived to be the safer investments out there, and cash, right? They have about the same type of qualities as far as return and risk go. That's interesting. That's eye-opening. Over a 10-year period, it's about the same. It's about the same risk-reward qualities of stocks and bonds. Here's the interesting part. This is why we preach this so much here, is that over the worst 20-year period for stocks, the worst period, 20-year period, the markets, the stocks have done 6% per year for those 20 years. That's the worst it's ever been. The best it's ever been is 17% per year for 20 years. That's the best it's ever been. That's the 80s and 90s, right? That's a great time to be an investor. Bonds, 1% per year for those 20 years. Still positive, but there is a major, major difference between stocks and bonds over a 20-year period. Now, this is going to be helpful. I think Chris is going to talk about educating your kids, your grandkids, people you love and trust, because this is a piece that, if for a younger person, owning anything but stocks, potentially, well diversified, of course, may be a mistake long term, right? So that's why we own stocks, and that's why we keep talking to you guys about that.
So before you go back to that one. So let me ask you a question. This is a fundamental, I'm going to probably give you occasionally 5-star tips. This is one. You are not taught this. You were not taught this. You were not taught that at 5 years the risk of stocks and bonds are equal. So let me ask you a question. If we put these fundamental pieces together, would you like all your beneficiaries, kids, friends, grandchildren, to learn what you've learned now, what you've learned along the way now? Anybody here interested in that? We're putting ways together. So one thing we're going to commit to is starting putting pieces together that you can forward to your friends, that they can consume. You can forward to the kids directly for them. This is one of those fundamental pieces, teaching them to be great investors, great behavior. So there's 4 or 5 of these charts. We're going to put those together, send them to you. You can forward to them. You can give us a email, but we're putting a list together of those as well. A lot of your kids are already clients of ours, but it's just something we want to commit to as well.
Absolutely. Good.
So Ken mentioned rebalancing, and I'll show you exactly how that worked over the last 2 years. So let's look at 2017 and what happened in 2017. So we have the top line is the emerging markets, 24.81% return. The next line down is international large cap, 17.38. The S&P 500 is the next line, 15.55. And bonds at 1.06. And I'm extremely thankful for 2017 and going into 2018 because it showed us exactly why we rebalance. Let's look at 2018 and see why. The top line, bonds, negative 2.52%. S&P 500, 7.54% down. International large cap, 20.50. Emerging markets, down 22.91. So what did we do in last year's rebalance meeting? We sold off of the emerging markets, sold off of the international, bought more of bonds, and bought more of the S&P 500 large cap U.S. stocks. Why is that so important? Because our portfolio would have been at a major, major risk if we would have just let it go and go, oh, emerging markets, it's going to go great. China's going to keep going on an exponential pace. Wait a minute. Let's slow down. Let's stick to our strategies and rebalance every single year. And it was a phenomenal lesson for us moving forward.
Thank you very much. A couple things now. I'll just run over these quick because this is hard to tell, but we read once a quarter, actually once every month, we get 70 to 80 charts, a whole book of charts. It comes from JP Morgan. But this one is basically telling us that the valuation on stocks, which started the year at a phenomenally high, 19.1 PE, presently in almost every category, and actually every single category, they're undervalued as of the 31st of December. That portends well. That shows good signs on a go-forward basis. What's driving it? Well, actually, this orange line is corporations are still buying their stock. Investors have yet to jump in and go, yep, it's good. Now you're starting to see markets go up again, right? Without a whole lot of reason. There is reason. We had a phenomenal year last year. We're up the highest earnings we've had in 27 years. It was a huge year for growth in earnings, dividends, value in the portfolio. But what was exactly opposite? Your portfolio did what? Fell in value. How could that happen? Because they don't correlate exactly immediately. They correlate over time. So you're finding here, corporate buybacks were huge. Taking a look at this as well. You mentioned it before. We see your portfolio. You've all seen this before. The market's volatile. But here's the key. This is all great. What do I do about it? Since it's individual and your situations are different, we're just going to hit a few highlights on this. Some of the tax law changes here. Anybody hear tax law changes last year? Is it changing the way we do some strategy? Yes. So it reduced the tax rates. It increased the standard deduction. Changes to exemptions. We got personal exemptions that are smaller. State and local tax limitations. That's big in the state of Wisconsin, okay, because of our property taxes and our income taxes. Mortgage interest deduction decreased from $1 million mortgage to $750,000. And this one is a
here's a good one. So W-2 withholding, that's an interesting one because a lot of people are going to be shocked by this. If you're working, there was actually a federal change, and they didn't tell us about it. Well, it was out there, but I think it's fairly deceiving, is that if you're claiming 1, 2, or 0, right, and having tax being withheld from your paycheck, there's actually a reduction in how much is being withheld. So that's interesting for some people because some people are going to be a little shocked come tax time because they're like, oh my goodness, I thought I was holding the proper amount of tax. Well, how come I'm under withheld? Well, the double standard deduction, there's a lot of pieces to this, so we just wanted to bring that to your attention. Changes the 529 plans. Really, in summary here, the thing that changed the most is that now you can use up to $10,000 for K through 12 private tuition. That never used to be the case. It always had to be for higher education to use your 529 college funds. K through 12 now, they'd open it up. Qualified charitable distributions, we're going to get into some planning ideas behind this one and some of the things that we're seeing there as well.
So the question is, what can I do about it? Let's give you 3 ideas from here of what we can do about it and what we'll do together, but to get you thinking before you come in for your appointments.
Here's a good one. Qualified charitable distributions. So this is if we're over 70.5. We have to be over 70.5 to make these. And we're sending some of that to a church, local organization, a nonprofit, if you will. So there's this conversation about how that doesn't really show up as income. There's a little bit of a loose terminology there, right? So if you take out $30,000, to use an example, $30,000 of a required minimum distribution, say that's it, right? That all shows up on a 1099-R. 1099-R, it all shows up. If you took, say, $10,000 of that 30 and sent it directly to the church for a qualified charitable distribution, you have to be able to signify that somewhere on your taxes. Know that it all shows up on the 1099, but that $10,000 that you sent directly to the church is not counted as taxable income.
So donor advised funds. So this is another way to contribute to charity. Remember what you used to do when you used to pay your income, your property tax just in January and then in December, so you could count it as single. Remember the bunching? Well, because of the standard deductions now, we're finding people doing that here. We're finding people doing that with donor advised funds, taking 5 years worth of donations to church, putting it in 1 year so they get over the standard deduction, which is now $14,000. As a couple, it's $26,600, let's call it. So, well, holy cow, what does that mean? Well, now you actually may not get the benefit of the standard of the itemized deduction. So we've got different ways we can do that now. So think about that. This is what we're looking at in planning. Roth IRA conversions.
Yeah, Roth conversions, this is a good one. So this goes back to what Chris was talking about. So instead of getting the panic phone calls, hey, the markets are down, we're getting phone calls, hey, do you think we should take some money from the traditional IRA that we have and put it into the Roth IRA that we have? The answer is that's a great idea if it makes sense for you. So what we'll do, this is so specific to your situation, we'll help you calculate whether this makes sense for you or not. If it does, we'll jump on it, it makes sense, right? That's the way, so basically what that is when the money shifts over to the Roth IRA, the markets go back up, all the earnings that we get back are tax-free rather than taxable. But it has to be in your best interest to do that, and we'll help you calculate that as well.
You bet. One very important thing, you all have and have had a plan. We've done it with the REACT program. We've done it here through Raymond James. It's called, for us, you'll see it just as our financial planning program. Every one of you is going to notice that we're going to make sure this is financial planning. But guys, know what the most populated island is in the world? Long Island, somebody said? Somebody said Long Island? Maybe. Anybody else want to guess? Hong Kong? Okay. Some good educated people out here. You might know. Actually, you know what it is? Someday I'll. It's populated with all those ideas and those things that you've always wanted to do. The next section of what I'm going to show you is how those things may actually get done. They may be auto-magical. They may be health-jevity. But I'm going to edutain you during the second half of this program.